Welcome to Wealth of Words, where we explore thought-provoking books that shape our understanding of the world. I'm Richard Posa, your co-host for tonight, and we're diving deep into Sex Matters by Osho. You've likely heard of Osho,
Oh, yeah.
the controversial spiritual teacher known for his bold views on sex and love. But today we're going deeper into his book, Sex Matters, to uncover the core ideas and see what insights we can glean.
And I'm Isabella.
Oh, yeah.
I'm excited to unpack this one. Richard Osho really pushes boundaries and challenges conventional thinking, so this should be an interesting discussion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right from the start, Osho throws down the gauntlet, claiming that religions and cultures have demonized sex, labeling it as sinful or immoral. He argues that this fear and repression actually harm our capacity for both love and spiritual growth.
What's fascinating here is that he doesn't just point fingers. He uses a really clever analogy to illustrate how society blames individuals for their struggles with love when the problem might be rooted in societal teachings themselves. He tells a story about a king and a fan seller. The king buys a fan that's supposed to last a century, but it breaks in days. The seller then blames the king for not using it properly. It's a powerful way to show how we often internalize blame for so-called failed relationships, when the issue might be with the messages we've received about love and sex in the first place.
It's like we've been handed a broken compass and then blamed for getting lost. It really makes you think, doesn't it? Have you ever felt that pressure, that blame for not experiencing love correctly? I know I've questioned myself at times, wondering if I'm doing relationships right.
That's a really important point, Richard. Societal conditioning runs deep, and it's easy to fall into those patterns of self-doubt. Osho is encouraging us to examine those ingrained beliefs. Then he goes on to completely redefine the relationship between sex and love, arguing that they aren't separate entities but deeply intertwined.
Right, he flips the script. Instead of putting love on a pedestal and viewing sex as something separate or even inferior, he argues that sex is actually the foundation upon which love can blossom.
He uses a vivid metaphor to illustrate this idea: the transformation of coal into a diamond under immense pressure. Think about it. Coal in its raw form is dark and rough, but under the right conditions, under intense pressure and heat, it transforms into something beautiful and precious, a diamond. Osho suggests that sexual energy, when approached with awareness and intention, can undergo a similar transformation, evolving into a higher form of love.
That's a great way to visualize it.
Yeah.
So instead of seeing sex and love as these opposing forces, he's saying that understanding and embracing our sexual energy is key to cultivating deeper, more meaningful connections.
Exactly. And it's not about giving in to every fleeting desire, but recognizing that this energy exists within us and it can be channeled in different ways. It can lead to creative expression, deeper intimacy, or even spiritual growth.
And that leads us to another one of his key arguments, the danger of repression. He warns that suppressing sexual energy doesn't make it disappear. It just distorts it, leading to all sorts of unhealthy behaviors.
It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. You can push it down, but it will keep popping up somewhere else, often in unexpected and potentially harmful ways. Osho suggests that repressing sexual energy can manifest as obsessions, perversions, even violence. He tells a story about a farmer who gifts a coat to his friend, but then becomes so fixated on the fact that it's his coat that it poisons the friendship.
It's such a brilliant parallel to how society often treats sex.
Mm-hmm.
We're told to ignore it, to be ashamed of it, yet it lingers in the back of our minds, fueling all sorts of anxieties and fixations.
Oh.
Osho argues that by acknowledging and accepting our sexual desires instead of burying them, we can avoid these neuroses and perversions that often stem from denial. Have you ever noticed this in your own life, Isabella, or maybe in the lives of others, where denying a desire led to some kind of unhealthy obsession or behavior?
Absolutely. I think we've all seen examples of this, whether it's someone developing an unhealthy attachment to another person or channeling repressed desires into workaholism or other compulsive behaviors. It underscores the importance of honest self-reflection and understanding the potential consequences of denying a natural part of who we are.
It makes you wonder how much societal pressure contributes to these issues. If we were more open and honest about sex, maybe we'd have healthier relationships with ourselves and others. But instead of stopping at just acknowledging and accepting our sexual energy, Osho takes it even further. He suggests that sex, when approached mindfully, can actually be a pathway to something much greater, to higher consciousness.
This is where it gets really interesting. He argues that sexual intimacy, when experienced with awareness and intention, can offer a glimpse into a state of what he calls divine union, a deep connection not just with another person, but with something larger than ourselves.
He talks about orgasm as a moment of thoughtlessness. Can you explain what he means by that?
Think of that moment when you're completely absorbed in an activity like painting or listening to music and your mind goes quiet. That feeling of being completely present, free from the constant chatter of thoughts. That's a taste of what Osho means by thoughtlessness. He argues that orgasm, when experienced with awareness, can offer a fleeting glimpse of that same state, a brief taste of pure consciousness.
So it's not just about the physical pleasure, but about tapping into a deeper potential within ourselves.
Exactly. And this ties into the larger themes of mindfulness and meditation that run throughout Osho's work. He's not just advocating for unrestrained sexual expression, but encouraging us to bring awareness and intention to all aspects of our lives, including our sexuality.
So he's challenging us to completely reframe our understanding of sex, to see it not just as a physical act, but as a potential doorway to something much greater.
That's a great way to put it. It's a radical shift in perspective, challenging centuries of ingrained beliefs and societal taboos. And it's this shifting perspective that leads us to Osho's ultimate message about the transformative power of love.
He posits that love in its purest form transcends physical or emotional attachment. It's not about possession or control, but a state of being, a deep connection with the universe where the ego dissolves.
And unlike lust, which can be fleeting and possessive, this type of love is unconditional, boundless, and profoundly liberating. He uses a beautiful story to illustrate this concept, the story of the giving tree.
Ah, yes, the tree that selflessly offers everything it has to the boy, asking for nothing in return.
Exactly. It's a poignant representation of the selfless, all-encompassing nature of true love. It really makes you contemplate the different forms love can take in our own lives, the love based on need versus the love that simply gives without expectation.
That's a profound distinction. It invites us to examine our own experiences with love and question the motives behind them. Are we seeking to receive or to simply give without condition?
And ultimately, Osho argues that this unconditional selfless love is the highest form of energy we can experience, the ultimate expression of our spiritual potential. It's about moving beyond the limitations of the ego, beyond the need for control and possession, and embracing a love that flows freely and unconditionally.
It's a beautiful concept, but it also feels incredibly challenging. Like, how do we actually cultivate that kind of love in our everyday lives?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Osho would say it begins with self-awareness. It starts with understanding how societal conditioning has shaped our perceptions of both sex and love, recognizing those ingrained beliefs we were talking about earlier.
So peeling back those layers of guilt and shame that we've inherited and maybe haven't even examined.
Exactly. And then it's about embracing our sexual energy, not with fear or repression, but with curiosity and acceptance, seeing it as this raw potential that can be channeled into something beautiful and powerful.
Osho seems to be saying that by embracing our natural instincts, by understanding the deeper meaning behind these experiences, we can actually move closer to spiritual enlightenment.
That's a core tenet of his philosophy. He sees the path to spiritual growth not as something separate from our human experiences, but as something woven into the very fabric of our lives, including our sexuality. It's not about instantly achieving some enlightened state, but rather about taking small steps and making those conscious choices every single day, being mindful in our relationships and our intimate moments, in how we approach love and desire.
You know, it's interesting. Osho's approach to sex, it's so different from what we're often taught. It's not about morality or rules, but about understanding energy transformation and potential.
That's a great observation. He's essentially reframing the entire conversation instead of focusing on judgment and guilt. He shifts the focus toward exploration and liberation, and he reminds us that this journey from sex to love, from lust to consciousness, is a process.
It's a really empowering message, this idea that we have this innate power within us to transform our lives, our relationships, even our understanding of the world through how we approach sex and love.
Absolutely, and that's what makes Osho's work so compelling, even controversial. He's challenging us to question everything we thought we knew to break free from societal constraints and embrace a more expansive, more liberating view of ourselves and the world around us.
It's definitely a lot to process. So what does this all mean for us, for our listeners who are grappling with these big questions about sex, love, and spirituality?
I think Osho's message at its core is one of liberation and empowerment. He's urging us to shed the layers of shame and guilt that society has imposed upon us and to embrace our sexuality as a natural, beautiful, and potentially transformative force in our lives.
He's encouraging us to approach sex and love with mindfulness and intention, to see them not just as physical or emotional experiences, but as pathways to deeper connection, greater understanding, and ultimately a more fulfilling life.
And he's reminding us that this journey is an ongoing process, a continuous exploration of ourselves and our potential. It's about asking questions, challenging assumptions, and choosing to live with greater awareness, authenticity, and love.
It's a powerful invitation to step outside of our comfort zones and really examine those deep-seated beliefs that shape our experiences.
Precisely. And to remember that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to these matters. What Osho offers is a framework for thinking a new lens through which to view these fundamental aspects of human existence.
And even if we don't agree with everything he says, the active questioning of exploring these different perspectives can be incredibly valuable in itself.
Absolutely. It can lead to greater self-awareness, a deeper understanding, and ultimately more fulfilling relationships with ourselves and others.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into sex matters,
Hmm.
I'm left with this lingering question. If we were to truly embrace Osho's message of liberation and transformation, how might that shift our approach to sex and love? How might it impact our relationships and personal growth?
That's a wonderful question to ponder, Richard, and one I encourage our listeners to reflect on as well. Imagine approaching intimacy with a sense of curiosity and reverence, seeing it as an opportunity for connection, for growth, and even for spiritual exploration.
It's a radical shift in perspective for sure, but one that holds immense potential for personal and collective transformation.
Indeed, and perhaps by embracing this more open and accepting view of ourselves and our desires, we can begin to create a world where love in its purest form can truly flourish.
Well said, Isabella. A huge thank you to you for guiding us through this deep dive into Osho's thought-provoking work. It's certainly given us a lot to think about.
The pleasure was all mine. It's always fascinating to delve into these complex topics and explore different ways we can approach life's big questions.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey. We'd love to hear your reflections on sex matters and the themes we've explored today. Don't forget to follow us and share your thoughts. We love hearing from our fellow book enthusiasts.
Be sure to subscribe to Wealth of Words for more deep dives into thought-provoking books that challenge our perspectives and expand our understanding of the world.
Until next time, happy reading.